That's better.
Right, good morning. We're speaking to Lionel and Julia. They're here today to speak to us about family constellations, what it is, and what the process is one goes through and how it would benefit. So over to both of you. Thanks for joining this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting us in. So Family Constellations was developed by a man called Bert Hellinger, who was once a priest and then became a psychologist. And he lived in South Africa and worked with the Zulu nation for a very long time, and then decided to go and study further. And he studied many modalities. But what he found was that in the particular culture he was working, they really connected very deeply with their ancestors, had a very strong link to their ancestral lineage. So what family constellation work does is we've taken the work of Bert Hellinger and other people who have also continued with the work, and it works with your family line and in different areas of how you connected to your ancestors. And in some instances, those ancestral lines are what we call entangled. So you might find yourself repeating patterns in this lifetime. You're not sure why, what is happening, or you feel you don't belong in your family, or there's an illness, or you cannot attract abundance into your life. And what we do is uncover those patterns that have evolved through that family line. And in that, what we create is what we call the orders of love, which is what Bert Hellinger talked about. So the idea behind that is we all have an equal and rightful place to belong in our families. And when someone is not given their rightful place in their family structure, they continue to go onto these dysfunctional patterns that no longer serve their highest self. And some of the work is also involved with trauma. So people who have lost someone, or there's been death or trauma in their lives, might be still stuck in their traumatic response. And in family constellations, we invite that healing to happen for them. Lionel, do you want to step in a little bit more?
Absolutely. And what's important to note is, of course, in the cultural world, working with ancestors is something that is, normal. Whereas in the Western world, we don't. We kind of move on, and we don't really go back into our ancestral plans. So it's really kind of not aimed at the Western world. I wouldn't say that, but it certainly helps us reconnect, with the past and clear up stuff that we need to do.
And how a family constellation is set up in a group setting is that we create what we call a morphogenic field. So this is a field of energy that calls in the soul. It sounds a little bit wooey, but it's not. It calls in the energy of the soul of that person. So we choose representatives within a circle, and we invite them into that space. And as constellators, we look at the movement of what's happening energetically and the feeling experience of those people in the circle. So they're representing those people that the querent is calling in. And the person who's asking to be constellated will witness what is going on. So whatever's happened for them, they're not being re-traumatized, but they can see the unfolding patterns that they may themselves not be aware of. And the power of a group, which is why we love to have a group session, is that people create part of this field, and they're doing the healing, and this healing works 7 generations back and 7 generations forward. So whatever I'm working on in that circle, I will be healing my family line moving forward, especially for those people who've got children. They are giving them that opportunity to not be entangled in something that is not their rightful place to be entangled with. So we're doing the work on behalf of many other people, which is why we love to do the group work. Everyone benefits.
What's also, many people say, yeah, but I'm not too sure if I wanted my family to be involved in the circle. And we don't need your family. All we need is you, and we have representatives that represent the family. So your family doesn't even have to know that you're doing the work, for yourself on their behalf. So that's an important one. And sorry, you mentioned something else and I was going to...
Also, just that the family constellation groups that we do run are very sacred. So people are sworn to confidentiality, that they don't share anything outside of the group. So if people are worried that someone's going to actually go and say, oh, something happened to me, and we share names, we ask them please not to do that, so that there's no confidentiality that's in any way breached for that person. Because often people bring very, very personal stuff to the work. And so we hold it we have a lot of integrity in around the work that we do. After each constellation, we ask them to please, we will follow up with them to make sure that they're all right. Because very often big issues are opened up in that family constellation work, and people are quite shaken by what's actually happened. And this work needs to be experienced. It's very hard to intellectualize it, but to experience the actual work being done on family constellations.
Also, if I may add, sometimes you have people that kind of feel that their story is kind of very private, very personal, and they're concerned about bringing that into a bit of a public space and circle. So what we do is we do blind constellations. So only the facilitator and what we refer to the client knows the story, and then we bring in representatives who don't know who they're representing, and we allow the field to do it that way. So the story remains totally hidden or private, but the work gets done nevertheless. And when you witness a blind constellation and you see the power of the work without anybody knowing the story, that's really when you get to see, wow, this really does work. This isn't manipulated in any kind of way.
And what kind of situations do people come into family constellations with? Is it sort of if someone was wanting more abundance or to clear sort of poverty issues, or is it mainly just things that happen in sort of family dynamics and relationships, or is it sort of for one saying, they're really not thriving in life and things seem to be a battle and there's a pattern that they're pursuing? Is that something one would work with in a family constellation session? And
yes, family constellations has got endless permutations. So very common ones are people who don't feel they belong, or they are feeling a lack of joy in their life, or they feel that there's something missing in their life. Family constellations will often work with that, because sometimes what could happen is there might have been a missing father in their life, or a father that wasn't available. So we resource them with that ability to actually reconnect with that part of themselves that feels that they belong. There might also be instances that there might have been a death in the family, or someone has died, that they haven't yet been able to fully allow that person to move on, or to heal that wound for themselves. It also works if there's been trauma, whether it's been death or rape or murder. It also works with people who've been relocated to different countries, who don't feel that they belong in one country or another. We give them their rightful place of allowing them to belong in their countries. It's endless what you can work with in family constellations.
But to answer your question, yes, we certainly look at careers when you find that you're not moving forwards, or financially you're stuck, you're just not attracting the finance or the abundance that you should. We certainly look at that. Also choice, for example, you need to make a choice whether you need to move to Australia or the UK. We can constellate that and give you the answer. One thing that constellation does not do, however, is curiosity. I will not handle a constellation where I'm not sure, should I have this boyfriend or that one? The constellation will totally keep it out. So it's not about curiosity. It's sacred. It's sacred, deep work, and so we respected that.
And then during
we've also.
I'm just thinking of family dynamics. Do you work with children and within families, or would you take a whole family, mom, dad, 3 kids, and work with them in a family constellations, or is it more for one parent or someone having this concern or problem to work within a group of people with you, or how does that work? Because you say family constellations, but it's not just constellating a family. It's normally somebody with a particular issue would come on their own to address situations.
So we certainly constellate families that include children. So I'll give you a personal example. My family, we've got 2 children, a 14-year gap between them. And while our daughter was around, there wasn't a problem. But when my son was born, around about at the age of 5, we started picking up a big shift in the family, not only because there was an additional member, but something was out of sync. And I used to travel a lot at the time. And what he did automatically, subconsciously, he took my place at home, being the male. So he automatically took on my role as the father, as the man of the house. And when we constellated that, the facilitator asked, "How do you sit around the table?" And we said, "Well, we're quite open and flexible. We don't have this typical hierarchy thing." And she said, "Well, that's part of your problem." She said, "You have to sit in the right order. You're the eldest, then your wife, then your eldest daughter, and then your son." And my son fought me for 2 days because I was regaining my rightful place and putting him in his rightful place as the second born. And after 2 days, when he eventually surrendered, peace reigned at home again. So, so we do work with children, but we don't work directly with children normally under the age of 18. We kind of cap it 18 onwards. They can come in and constellate themselves. But a parent can certainly come in with the child and they constellate together. We had one recently. We were constellating a 12 or 14-year-old.
Yeah, but we often ask them to step out of the field because sometimes it's just too overwhelming for a 12-year-old to engage with this very deep work. It's sometimes just too much for them to grasp with what's going on.
Yeah.
And often what happens after constellation, people are actually not sure, like what just happened. Because if one is stepping into the field as a representative, you suddenly feel this energy around you. You're you, like I'm Julia, but I'll suddenly might feel hot or cold or an emotion will suddenly start coming up for me. And we step out of that representation once we finish. So you don't carry the energy of that person that you've been asked to represent in that circle. You just park that and allow that to just be what it is. Because some people feel quite overwhelmed after they've had this experience, especially, for instance, if once I represented a mad woman. So suddenly I had this feeling of this, I'm confused and there's this madness around me. But I can carry that energy for quite a long time afterwards and feel really confused about life. So what we ask is people, once they leave that field, is to let go of that person that they were asked to represent.
And there's a technique that we show in the group on how to do it.
And another thing that we do is that even if people are not constellating on that particular day, all representatives play an important part of the work, because very often someone else's story might be very close to my own story. And when I can see what's happening for them, I can understand, oh, wow, that really resonates for me. And I can relate to that as well.
And how do people work with you? It's always a physical session. You don't constellate online. Or can you, or is it always in person?
We prefer to work face to face, and we can do Zoom constellations. They do work very well, and people will be called in to be a representative on a constellation that just take a lot longer. And face to face is usually the best. One can also do one-on-one constellations where we use mats to represent the people that they would like to constellate.
Yeah, mats or stones or any object really does.
But there's no doubt that the group work is first prize, because you really get to connect with people that you can feel what's going on in the group itself. And it's a beautiful bonding experience for everyone who actually does the group work. So we love to do it in Pringle Bay, which is where we both live. And our house is geared towards a very contained, sacred, beautiful space that's connected to the energy around us, which is nature, which is the best place to do constellation work.
And is it a one-off session? How long does it last? And how many people do you put together? You do a required group, and the cost of attending one of your sessions?
Okay, so it depends and it varies on the situation, but an average constellation with about 45 minutes. It can go on to an hour, maybe a little longer, but we try and curb it at about 45 minutes. And again, so it's like an onion that you need to peel the onion. There's lots of layers, so we can't constellate everything at the same time. So we constellate a part of your life that you particularly want to focus on right now, and then of course you can come back and do another constellation, another part, and another part, another part. But once you've done a constellation, it changes already something in your life, so it may actually ripple effect into other areas that you thought were quite important and now dissipated. So it really depends on you. Some people think that they can come and constellate every weekend or every week, and that's not encouraged, because you obviously need the constellation and the emotions to settle in. So some recommend some facilitators. Yeah, you're correct. So to just pace yourself. It's energetically a lot of work that you need to process.
So usually we run the constellations between 9:30 and about 4 in the afternoon. And depending on how many people would like to constellate, we usually constellate between 3 and 4 people. We break, people bring their own meal. So we just share a meal after, in between the sessions with tea and coffee. If someone just wants to witness and be a representative, the cost for them is 250 Rand. But if someone actually wants to constellate, then we charge a little bit more, which is 500 Rand. And we just ask them for a commitment to actually appear on the day and to constellate on the day. If it's a particularly complicated thing that they'd like to work on, we often will send them a questionnaire, an email questionnaire, and ask them to fill that in so we have an idea of what's happened in their own lives. And often those questionnaires in and of themselves are very enlightening. They give someone a lot of food for thought to realize what's actually been involved in their family lines and in their life. Okay. And the interesting thing about constellations is I've had many aha moments in my training. One of the aha moments for me was I struggled to connect with close friends, to make female friends. I have friends, but really, really close friends. I only have maybe 1 or 2 I can count on. And what we learned was, in your family line, if your mother was unable to form a close bond with yourself and other people, you yourself become someone who finds it difficult to connect with other women, which was something I didn't realize. And then suddenly it dawned on me that was work that I needed to do for myself, to really be open to these new relationships, and why was that block happening for me. So that was a beautiful aha moment. Another one was for people who cannot attract financial abundance, that goes down your father line. So there might have been someone in your male ancestral line that was unable, or something happened to them in their own world, in their own financial world. You might be carrying their stuff today. So again, you work through that and you can heal that.
So it's really about seeing the patterns that your family hold and having that realization, and then breaking them in your own and 7 generations forward, which is quite amazing.
Correct. Yeah. And that's really how I got started. We were introduced to a constellation facilitator, and my daughter went off to Italy and to Scotland at university, and my son went off to Italy with his mom, and we wanted our children to have a clean slate, so that they wouldn't carry anything of us as a couple, and they wouldn't carry anything from our ancestors on either side. And so it gave them kind of a clean slate. So, I mean, other things may have happened since the constellation, but it's kind of fresh. It's fresh information as opposed to stuff that goes back 7 generations. So, and that's why it's a gift. It's a gift to one's children, to say, hey, we're doing the work on your behalf so that you can have a fuller life, and a less, life with less entanglement, or no entanglement, or to remove the entanglement, whichever way you want to look at it.
So you're dealing with sort of programming and dogmatic stuff that exists within families and that, because we programmed from such a young age. We're born to our parents and caregivers, so all of that patterning that we hold and why we repeat things in our lives, it's so sort of unconscious, most of it. So I assuming what you're doing is a lot of the work is making the unconscious conscious, and then one can address it in a adult knowing mind.
Yeah.
So it's also interesting to to note. I mean, in Julia's introduction, if you stand and you look behind you, you've got your two parents, and then you look further down the line, there's another two set of parents behind each of your parents, and then further on. So at any given time, you're looking at a family of 250, I think it is, or 240 ancestors that are standing behind you, just 7 generations back. So you are now almost responsible for clearing up the past 250 generation that you can now see. And so when we have, let's say, 10 people in our home and we're constellating, we're inviting 250 ancestors times 10. So it becomes a very, very full house of people, that we can't consciously see, but we can feel. So we do a clearing before we start. We clear and cleanse our home, and then we cleanse our home again when people leave, so that we don't carry everybody's stuff. And there's only so many people we can have in our home, and we'd like people to leave when it's done. We don't want them to hang around.
And some people will come and be quite skeptical about family constellations. I think, are you in that field? Are you just acting? Are you just acting to pretend like you're that person? But no, when they actually step into the field, they suddenly can feel that they're taking what our facilitator called it the hollow bone. So the soul energy is that person that suddenly steps into us, almost like a superimposition of that person on who we are. And it's not play acting, it really is a feeling experience. You cannot intellectualize this work. You've got to feel what it is like to actually be in that field and to be a representative of that field.
And sometimes you don't feel anything, and that's okay too, because that is a representative of what's actually happening to the person that they're representing. They're emotionally closed, and that's okay. So nobody's forcing you to feel something that you're not feeling. And interestingly enough as well, recently, last year, we did quite a hectic constellation here at home. And the mother who came with the two adult children, while I was busy cleansing her, what we call smudging, she said, I'm a Christian. I don't quite do this kind of thing. I'm feeling quite uncomfortable and quite anxious about this. I've come here with my children. I was asked to come, but it's really not my thing. And so I reassured her, we don't dwell in religion. This does not involve religion in any way. But the simplest form is, in a way, we are dealing with the Holy Spirit. The energy that you're dealing is the Holy Spirit. But it doesn't matter what denomination you are, we don't bring in religion in any way. It's got nothing to do with religion.
More just deeper personal work, and not religion or spiritual or too woo. I think that's what people sort of
correct.
Yes. And family constellation work it's done internationally all over the world. There are many groups. We're not the only ones. We run constellation groups in the Western Cape. And there are other groups that are being run as well in Cape Town and further out. What we love is the fact that Pringle Bay is only 1.5 hours from Cape Town. People can come into this space. They can look back at Cape Town and they can see the mountain there. And it just gives them a bit of space from the everyday experience to come and do something that is really quite a beautifully enriching experience. And very often it means that you don't have to go to therapy for years and years and years. You can simply do 1 or 2 constellations and you get it. It's just such an immediately beautiful way of untangling yourself from stuff that you continue to repeat in your life.
That sounds
constellation work can also work with organizational constellations within companies, land reclamation. So when there's been an unfairness in land, it can work with bigger issues around countries, around COVID, they've done constellations on. So it's just, the permutations are endless for constellation work.
And it just seems to be getting better and bigger and more interesting, you know, as we do the work. It just really is quite something, yeah. So both Julia and I have trained. We've both done. Well, Julia's done 3. I've done 4 courses. We've done many hours of constellations, and eventually we thought, okay, it was time. You know, during COVID, we thought it was time to do it, to facilitate ourselves. We've got the space and we've got the knowledge. Both of us have been facilitating for a long time. I run my own company. Julia's a life coach and a therapist. So, you know, we both together equipped, and we actually facilitate together. So some clients happy just one of us to facilitate for them. And most people say, would you mind both facilitating, you know, my constellation? And so we do it together and we complement each other beautifully. You know, Julia likes the nitty-gritty. I feel a lot. And so I get the concept, I get to see exactly what's happening, and Julia steps in and does all the other stuff around it. So we really work well together. You know, a lot of people say, how do you actually do this together? And when you see us in action, you go, okay, I get it. And it's beautiful to see how we're able we synchronize beautifully, and we work together.
You probably complement each other. You're bringing, you know, different aspects into the work.
Yeah, exactly.
Very
and the yin and the yang helps as well.
Yeah, we each bring in our own strengths to the constellation work, and we know where those strengths lie innately between us. And I might have the more motherly, closing, softer side. Lana will have the insight, the intuitive side, or the warrior energy. So we just blend those two into a constellation, and it unfolds for those people, which is really beautiful.
It does sound really beautiful and beneficial, the masculine and the feminine energy in the So, sorry, what was that?
Yeah, we hope you're going to come to our next one.
I probably will.
Nice. Yeah, please do. Yeah.
But very nice speaking to you, both of you, and thank you for jumping on and giving us this time and telling us more about family constellations. I'll put in the links when we share this, what the next dates and how people can contact you to book a session.
Super. Wonderful. Thank you so much for inviting us into this session. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure, and certainly hope that we've been able to clarify what's all about, you know, and it's not all woo-woo stuff. It's pretty intense, and beautiful. So just on a closing note, the younger you are, the younger you're exposed to family constellation, you know, but I mean by young is above 18, the better, because the onion has got less less layers. So, you know, the older you do it, the more layers there are, which means the more tears there are. The younger you are, there's less layers, less tears. So we encourage the younger generation. And it's interesting through the years that we've been doing it, how the groups are getting younger and younger and younger. And that's beautiful. That's a good sign.
It is beautiful. I think there's also just more awareness in younger generations looking at us older, you know, messed up, and they're like, I'd rather deal with this and sort out this stuff now, younger, and not go through more life, make more mistakes, and then deal with it, which is
correct.
You know, what some of us also have done. So it is nice. It's encouraging that younger people are doing, you know, the deep work, what I call the inward work in solving the situations within themselves and the dynamics and going forward, making less mistakes and less people around them unhappy because they've done their own internal work.
Well, that's
absolutely.
Nice.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much for this. It's been lovely. I love talking about it because it just makes me so excited to do this work.
Yeah, I can see how excited you are about the work, and get a good idea of the energy you bring into it. It was beautiful speaking to you both.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And thank you so much, Elaine.
Thanks.
Go well.